All right, good evening. My name is Steve Adams, and today we're going to talk a little bit about steep spirals. Please bear with me, not usual way I do this, but unfortunately it's going to have to work for today due to some technical difficulties and internet issues. So anyways, let's move on to steep spirals. So the first thing we need to talk about here is what's the purpose of a steep spiral. The purpose of a steep spiral is to provide a fight maneuver for rapidly dissipating substantial amounts of altitude while over a selected spot. This maneuver is especially effective for emergency descents or landings. A steep spiral is a gliding turn where the pilot maintains a constant radius around a surface based on a reference point while rapidly descending. Very similar to turns around a point, but with a descent. The maneuver should never be continued below 1,500 feet above AGL unless an actual altitude exists, and the steepest bank should not exceed 60 degrees and should be a constant rate of turn while correcting for wind drift by steeping the bank on downwind headings and shallowing the bank on upwind headings, just as in a maneuver. The maneuver turns around a point. So I created a little checklist here for me, if you will, that I kind of borrowed from a different entity, if you will. And the first thing is always altitude, at least 3,000 feet. I usually start the exercise about 4,500, but you got to make sure that the altitude selection complete 360-degree turns before 1,500 feet AGL. Second step, do your 290-degree clearing turns. And then for me, 80 knots. So as I'm coming back on the into the wind, I like to trim the aircraft for 80 knots, about 1,700 RPMs on the 172, and maintain that altitude. Makes the maneuver 10 times easier once you clean the power. Once you kill the power. Clean configuration, of course, flaps up, gear up. You got to choose a visual reference point. And so at this point, you kind of got two: the one you're spinning around on the ground on as you're descending, and then the one you're going to roll out on in front of you. So once you have that visual reference point and you're over your point, you're going to rotate over, reduce the throttle power to idle, and then you got to perform 3 constant radius turns around the reference point, maintaining constant airspeed, plus or minus 10 knots, a bank angle that you adjust for the winds not to exceed 60 degrees, and then of course clear the engine every 360 degree turns. And then once you recover, you roll out on a Pacific heading for a visual reference. The maneuver looks a little bit like this. Up here on the top left, we would start, we'd come in, kill the power, we'd rotate around our point. Notice we start the maneuver into the wind, and then we continue to descend down. Steeping the bank on a downwind motion. All right, common errors for this are not clearing the area, inadequate pitch control, gaining altitude. How do you gain altitude? Well, as we try to correct to slow the aircraft down speed-wise. Some folks will put too much pitch into it, up pitch, if you will, that will slow the aircraft down but also gain altitude at the time. Not correcting the bank angle, compensate for wind. We talked about that on slide 1. Poor flight control coordination, skidding or sliding into the turn. Ineffective use of trim, exactly why I trim into the event. Inadequate airspeed control. Once again, plus or minus at 10 knots, and that's all. How do you control airspeed in this event? Via pitch, right? Becoming disorientated, forgetting how many turns you are or where you're into the turn, only completing 2 turns, maybe completing 4 turns, performing a reference maneuver by flight instruments rather than visual references. I don't know how you do that one, but I'm sure somebody's done. Not scanning for other traffic during the maneuver. You've always got to be looking for other traffic. And of course, don't forget to pick a landing spot in the event that something happens to the aircraft, like the engine dies because it's idle for so long, and not completing the turn in a designated heading, on the designated heading or reference maneuver or reference spot. All right, so let's go to, I did this weekend. We'll kind of talk through this. Our aircraft's over here on the left. We've got our hood down here, and this is a visual representation of the altitude as we descend down. Notice we've started our turn. We're about 90 knots. Of course, the wind was on the nose. It's going to push us in, so we're going to wrap this up, get us our steepest angle of bank here at this point. We started our descent. We're down about 1,900 feet a minute. Got the altitude, our airspeed's increasing just slightly. We continue to increase our angle of bank here, and now we start to take it out just a tad bit. As we get across, we're back down on the upwind, if you will, piece. Right, airspeed's got gotten away from us just a little bit. We're going to come back. We got to steepen the bank because guess what? The wind's blowing us now again. We're about to be on the downwind piece. Here we go. We continue. We're about 80 knots ground speed. We're 3,500 feet. We started at 4,500 feet. We're continuing our turn. And of course these links will be in the video presentation, so you'll be able to watch those also. All right, here we go. Leeson, we're about to steepen our bank again as we get the nose back onto the nose of the aircraft. We get the wind back on the nose. Here we go. How about our steepest point of banks right here as we continue to turn around the point. And the point was actually a dock right about here, if you will. We're now completed our second degree of turn. We've cleared the engine already. We're at 2,900 feet. We've got about half a turn more to go. And we leasen the bank. We just did. Now we're getting ready to steepen the bank again as we turn back into the wind. And then we're going to roll back out right about here. We'll roll back out right about on the same heading we started. And we finished the maneuver at 2,200 feet. As we come back up, finishing the maneuver, same point, 2,100 feet and about 100 knots. And it is complete. So now we're going to move from there. So let's watch this quick video here real quick when we actually perform the maneuver and what it looked like.
It's going to be the best start in the world.
What's the heading you at?
Just because I'm standing, alright, yours.
Okay, I got it. Are we there?
All right,
All right, now we go.
at this point, we just killed the engine power. And we're slowing to 80 knots, and then we'll start our turn.
I take it right to 60 degrees, and because you don't want to get blown downwind. All right, there you go. Each good. Coming into the wind. You're building up a little speed, so make sure to. There you go. All right, so you can ease the angle of bank when you're into the wind. There you go.
Traffic, Skyhawk 1407 Delta radio check.
All right, that's half a turn.
Yeah, that's clear.
Here you go.
Time of progress, too much Alpha, big sail, 2,000, so 2,000 to 4,000 maneuvers, just.
Right, there's one turn. There you go. Go right to 60. Clear. Okay. Right, get a little fast, so just. Okay, turn it downwind. You're getting steeper. That's good. Bring the nose up. There. Remember, you lose that vertical component of the leg.
Skyhawk 75938.
And that's 2 turns.
Turn back for a final runway 23. Simulate engine out, Chesapeake. And
Now, you got blown downwind, so here's what you do. Ease your angle of bank, right? And you can even slow down a little more. Don't get fast here. Try and head upwind as long as you can. And you can ease the angle of bank. You can even go wings level if you need to. I feel like you're going to overrun it, but there you go. So just take it easy, and then just work your way upwind. You got half a turn to go. All right, so now you're starting to turn downwind. So steepen. All right, keep your nose up. Bring the nose up. There you go. All right, ready? There you go. We're on heading.
And the maneuver is now complete. Any questions? Please see your CFI. Have a great day. See ya.